got a fan club. That's great. Awesome. Well, cool. So let's go ahead and get started then. Russ, did you have any announcements before I kind of did my thing?
No, we're still in need of speakers though, yeah. So there is a Google form, and actually I will drop the Google form into the chat if I can figure out how to chat without having.
Figure out how to get back to the thing. Yeah. So if you go to NashJS, nashjs.com or is it js.org? Whatever. NashJS.org, I think. There's a little thing here under the read more section on the page, and click that and you can fill it out. We'd love to have you speak. Huge thanks to Shadow for speaking tonight. It's always a welcome addition to the venue. So,
yeah.
Sorry, my kids are coming down now.
We love lightning talks as well. So if you, even if you want to just speak on something for 15 minutes, something you've learned, something you want to share, JS adjacent is what we would say.
Yeah,
it doesn't exactly have to be JS, but as close as you can get. I
mean, we'll take whatever we can get. So just that's not speaking highly of you there, Shadow.
Hey, man.
Just joking.
No, you're good.
No, yeah. So I wanted to give some props out to Shirian for kind of virtually hosting us tonight. They were kind enough to give us a pro Zoom subscription to stream this over to the YouTubes. So thanks to them. They are hiring. They got a ton of positions. It's a 19,000 person company. But the product org, which is the org that I'm a part of, actually is hiring for a number of positions, software engineers, engineering managers, directors, and so forth. So if you're interested, you're looking for a gig, let me know. Hit me up in the chat or hit me up on NashDev. If you go to nashdev.com, put your email address in if you're not a member, and you'll get a free invite and join like 6,000 other NashDevians. I don't know, whatever we're calling them. And yeah, reach out to me on there, and be happy to get the convo started and get you connected with one of our recruiters. Yeah, so we're in for a real treat. Shadow is going to be talking about building free and fast APIs using Vercel. If you're not familiar, Vercel is previously was it Zeit, I think. It was Guillermo Roche's company.
They switched from one difficult name to another.
Yeah. I liked the Zeit one because it was easier, it was quicker to type, but
for sure.
This one's cool too. And man, those folks know how to build a great solid product. Their CDN, their platform is just awesome. So I'm super excited to have Shadow talk about building APIs with this stuff. If you're not familiar, NashJS, kind of out of the same group, hugely popular React server-side rendering framework, and you can deploy Next on Vercel easily. So check it out. Anyways, without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and maybe Shadow can start sharing his, and we'll get this going. So thanks everybody, and I'm glad you're here. And yeah, now for the awkward handoff. Here we go.
All right, awkward handoffs. Let's do it.
Okay, stop. I'm assuming stop share is going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah.
And I hope we're still live on YouTube. I think we're good. Okay.
Yeah, we're good. All right, so I'm going to share mine here. You'll see all of our beautiful faces for a second. Exit full screen. Get this out of the way.
Going to represent the NashJS t-shirt.
Oh yeah, I'm not used to this delay. Can you guys see my screen? I know it's super awkward.
We cannot.
All right, give me just a second. Oh yeah, I always forget that second share button. All right, how about now?
Looks good. Awesome. So I'm gonna drop off the video and mute myself and take it away.
Cool. All right, so I'm gonna do my introduction now. My name is Shadow Smith, is my real name. And I am a senior front-end engineer at Openly, where I'm working every day to make homeowners insurance beautifully simple. So anyway, everything I do there is, work on building the component library. I deploy the front end of Vercel. A lot of buzzwords, like I work with Jamstack architecture and all that fun stuff. And kind of Vercel is one of the championing forces behind that whole movement, along with Netlify and services similar. So this presentation comes from a pain point that I experienced when I was first kind of dipping my toes into building APIs and deploying those things online. And I was running into a lot of issues in terms of just building Tinker projects. So as you might have read in the description, a lot of times when you start building a API for the first time, you're like, well, I don't want to pay for some service to deploy this thing, and then I get capped at some free tier, or I'm using like Heroku free dynos, and I have an API over here that I throw up on Reddit or whatever, and it gets a ton of traffic, and then all of a sudden that traffic just kills it because I surpassed the free tier, and it also kills all of my other Heroku projects. And then you get that email notice that's like, hey man, you need to pay for this. And, being like a bootstrapper, online tinkerer, we're always looking for that way to get our idea out for free and not have to cross that pay gate until we absolutely have to, until we get like a MVP up and running. So I'm going to kind of start with a story that relates to that will lead naturally right into this whole talk. So I'm a super nerd. When I was a kid, I loved everything about Digimon, like every millennial that I know personally almost. So anyway, I built the Digimon API. It's this like super simple REST API. And I deployed it to Heroku, like I said. And a lot of people, well, a couple of people started picking it up and using it in like projects for college and boot camps and stuff like that. And they capped it. They just like maxed out my free tier, and it completely went down. So that was always a huge pain point. I've explored other options, but ultimately, I needed something that was going to be fast, free, and easy to set up. Because a little bit more into my history, I've been building websites for around 6 years. I started with vanilla everything, so vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I started dipping my toes into the node.js world a couple of years ago, and built this API, just kind of learning how to do that stuff. So Vercel takes an approach that is very, very close to my roots. It's very close to having static assets and just working with the web in that way. So all right, I'm gonna stop with the narrative and kind of move on from here. But ultimately, by the end of this talk, I'm gonna have a walkthrough where I show you how to deploy an Express API. It'll be very simple. It'll be a simple, one route. It'll be a GET request that returns just some plain text. And I will have the CI/CD set up, and the web app will be up and live at a URL. So without further ado, let's continue on. So Vercel, who are they? What's their claim to fame? Why should you even care? So Vercel, they, like Will mentioned, created Next, the server-side rendering framework for React. But I'm a Vue guy, so I don't play with Next. I play with Nuxt, and I use Vercel to do it more often than not for my front-end web apps. But their Vercel platform to me is really where this company stands out for sure. And it's in this whole paradigm shift over to Jamstack. And if anyone's familiar with what Jamstack is, that's awesome. I'm sure you're building tons of awesome stuff with it because it's so easy to work with. Definitely from a front end person, kind of transitioning to a full stack. But if you're not familiar with it, it's a funny acronym that has stack at the end. So the J is JavaScript, the A is APIs, and the M is markup. So the JavaScript would be like your front end framework. That would be Vue, React, Angular, Svelte, whatever the case. The thing that actually adds the pizzazz, the front end functionality to your web application. The A is APIs, and then the M is just your markup, like your HTML and CSS and all that. So with Jamstack, you're able to build full web applications that can be served as static assets through a CDN. There's a ton of benefits to doing that, and I'm going to go into those here in just a moment. But it's a massive paradigm shift to where we don't have to worry as much about backend architecture and all of the complexities that go along with scaling and containers and all of that stuff. We can focus on the part that's closer to the solution, the actual product we're trying to build, the thing we're trying to get users to interact with for whatever reason. This can be a Tinker project, full enterprise app, whatever the case. Jamstack, there's a ton of benefits to going in that direction. So one of the main reasons I love Vercel so much is their approach is to provide an unbelievable developer experience for front-end developers and just developers in general that are looking to have a CI, a continuous integration pipeline set up right out of the gate. They have a lot of tools that help with collaboration, really just the tooling around pushing up a project, having it visible to the world, and sharing it with your colleagues. They kill it. If you haven't tinkered with their stuff, you definitely need to do it. And this will be a great primer for you to do that after this video or tomorrow or whenever. So anyway, so one of the things that they do really well is they have direct Git integrations into GitLab, GitHub, and Bitbucket. There might be others, but those are the three top players that I know of in terms of Git repositories. And they make it so beautifully simple to get started. All you have to do is whenever you create your account, which we're going to do in this talk, is you just create your account with the service that you use, and then you have CI automatically. Sounds too good to be true, but I'm telling you, that's exactly how it works, and you'll see. So the next thing that provides an incredible developer experience is this concept that Vercel pioneered called preview deployments. So a preview deployment is whenever you do a push to a branch in a repository that has been integrated with Vercel, you get a unique URL for that branch's push. So you can have a deployment for production. You can have one for staging. You can have one for feature A, feature B, a sub branch of feature A or feature B. Really, any branch in your repository can have preview deployments that are live, and you can share them with anyone that you need to. It's great for open source work. It's great for getting buy-in from any stakeholders, whether it be investors or management or whoever. And it comes out of the box. Once you create your account, you sign up with GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, you automatically get this. And again, you'll see that in just a moment. Skip on past that. Another awesome thing about it, and this is kind of customary nowadays, definitely if you're familiar with Netlify at all, Netlify and Vercel are very similar. You have free automatic SSLs, so you don't have to go through this whole process of buying some $300 something SSL from GoDaddy, some wild card thing, you automatically just get it. You don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just done for you. Another thing that I forgot to mention in here is you can add custom domain names to your deployments, which again is pretty standard. But I've used both Netlify and Vercel pretty extensively with Jamstack work, and Netlify's domain name setup, like walking through setting up your DNS and all that stuff, is far, far better developer experience than Netlify. It actually constantly pings the DNS to see if it's ready to go without you even having to refresh the page. And if you're like me, that's always a huge pain point, and they made it super, super easy. Yeah, and then here is the even better part. They have a generous free hobby tier. And this, you can run a full business off of this pretty much. And I'll actually kind of go into the limits here. And I want to kind of preface this whole thing and say, I don't work for Vercel. I'm not getting a commission at all in any type of way with you using them. I just am very passionate about what they've built because it's made my life so incredibly easy. So if you look at these usage limits, the hobby tier, you get 100 deployments per day. That's plenty. You can do 12 serverless functions per deployment. That is if you use Vercel in the traditional sense of just having serverless functions and having it expose those things through the build process. I've never hit the 12 because you definitely could, but I've been kind of taking the route of turning an express API into a single serverless function. So I never hit 12. You can have 160 serverless functions per month. And, this is a part that you definitely need to be wary of, is serverless function duration in seconds. You have to make sure that the execution time of your serverless functions doesn't surpass 10 seconds, which that's a long time. There's a good chance if you're doing something that takes longer than 10 seconds, I'm not going to speak to exactly what all you would try with this, but you can get really far with just 10 seconds of execution time per serverless function. And then you can do 2,000 deployments from the CLI per week, which is just an absolute insane amount. Where they kind of get you is if you ever want to champion this at your company and you want to have a team, that's where pro and enterprise accounts come in, and that's where they actually make their money. And yeah, anyway, that's actually what I'm doing at work right now, is getting Vercel integrated into our front ends. Cool. So the very next thing, they make our jobs making a amazing front end experience for our users incredibly easy. They make it extremely fast and extremely powerful. And what I mean by that is they have a global edge network. And this is a fancy Vercel language for a CDN, or a content delivery network. The reason they're able to do this is, again, because of the whole Jamstack architecture. So you have your functions that get turned in, or you actually have your JavaScript and your HTML and CSS that get built into static files. They can be single serverless functions. And with that, just like if you use like Vue or jQuery from a CDN, how you literally just get that package of static information, they throw this thing all over the world. So you don't have a server that hosts your web application, and if someone does something that you didn't expect and it crashes your server, then your web application's down for everyone. It doesn't work that way with Vercel and Jamstack. It's replicated across their global edge network. So there's all these different locations across the world. And if someone does something that your application doesn't expect in Boston, this person over here in California will not see any issue with your application. It's not dependent anymore because all of the computing is moved to the network edge right beside where the user is located. The closest place to where the user is, that's where the actual JavaScript, HTML, and CSS gets served from. So, again, for us developers, not having to worry about those things is a beautiful thing. It's great. So this is where we get a little bit into the meat of the demo and the walkthrough. I'm going to start talking about configuring this thing. And, this talk, you might think, deploying an Express API on Vercel, oh, this is going to be 3-4 hours. It's not. This is actually going to be a fairly quick talk. And it's because of this part right here. The configuration is super simple to get, your JavaScript files converted into serverless functions and deployed and all that. So I'm really excited to dive into this part. So it all starts with a Vercel.json file. If you, as you're learning about this and kind of browsing the internet, you might see now.json as well. Both of those are still active. As Will mentioned, Vercel changed their name to Zeit. Vercel changed their name from Zeit to Vercel a couple months ago. So they're still supporting all of the now namespaces, but Vercel is kind of the way forward. So that's why I'm mentioning that here. So in this file, this is where you tell Vercel, whenever you push this thing up, exactly how to handle the files of your project, how to code split them if it needs to, how to deploy them as serverless functions and all of that. So yeah, I added these, interactive web sections in case I need to add additional context. But, I think I may kind of glance over these, but definitely feel free to go to the Vercel docs. All this stuff is right there. It's a pretty interesting read. So I'm just going to kind of skip past this part. So the next part of the Vercel.json file, and you'll actually see this in the walkthrough, is where you specify your builds. And whenever you specify a build, what this is, and we'll actually look at this JSON here, and this is part of the Vercel.json file. But as you can easily see, you specify a source in this array where you're saying, for any file that ends with .html, use the Vercel/static npm package on build to just deploy those things as static assets. So Vercel also handles Python. So you can tell it to build Python files as well and turn them into serverless functions. Again, this is NashJS. I don't really use that approach, but it's there if you want to give it a shot. And this is the one that we're really going to care about today is saying every file that ends in .js, and this is a wildcard. So this is like, if you had a bunch of just serverless functions in your project, it says use the Vercel node package to build those, turn them into serverless functions, and expose them at an endpoint, which we will map to in the very next section I'm about to talk about. But again, this is a wildcard, so you can just specify a single file there. It could be index.js. It doesn't have to be wildcard.js to just catch all, but that could work. So like I said, that is specifying how you want Vercel to treat your files when it goes through the build. Super simple stuff. Routes is once it does what you tell it to, how is it going to be exposed? What API endpoint or route is going to map to this serverless function or this static page or whatever the case? So as you can see here, there's this example, which is an object that says routes, has a source of about, and the destination is about.html. This would be if you were just throwing up static files and you want to make it to where whenever someone goes to your website, they don't have to, or whenever someone goes to your about page, they don't have to put in .html. They can just put in about, and Vercel will just do the mapping for you. What you'll see is in the walkthrough, I'm going to be mapping index.js, which is where our Express API will live, to, I can't remember the route. I think it's just the root. So it'll just be destination /. All right. So why Express? Why, Vercel has this ability to have an API directory in the root where you can specify a JavaScript file by some arbitrary name. You can say, shadow.js, have a little bit of boilerplate code in there just to get your serverless function up. And then Vercel will automatically deploy that as a serverless function. And then you kind of have an API. You don't even need to worry about Express if you take that approach. Well, that's true. And that's awesome. But for people who are new to the concept of serverless functions and are new to the concept of Vercel in general, I decided to take the approach that I took when learning about Vercel and get my Express API off of Heroku. That was my main pain point. I have this Express API. I don't want to re-engineer this thing to be serverless functions. I just want to get this thing moved over here to where I can deploy it for free. And I can deprecate the Heroku endpoint, tell everyone about the Vercel endpoint, and now everyone's back off to the races, super fast speeds and all this stuff. So to answer the question, I chose to do this talk over converting an Express API to a serverless function for that tinkerer in mind. The person who built something, it could be more or not, and they just want more performance out of it because there may be somebody that uses it in their project. Who knows? And it's a good introductory touch point for this whole thing in general. Cool. So now we're going to start the walkthrough, and I meticulously did this to where it will be super easy for everyone to understand what's going on. Cool. So I created on my GitHub account an Express on Vercel repository. And if you go to my GitHub, it's under Hey Shadow Smith. And I forked it into this demo Shadow Smith account. That way I can, do this for all of you today. But if you look at the repository, super straightforward boilerplate stuff. I got a README, index.js, package.json stuff, normal node project. And in the index.js, this is where our Express API is going to live. As you can see, like I said at the beginning of the talk, it's super simple. It's just, throw an Express in here, initializing it, creating our Git route. So whenever we hit this route, it throws back the text Express on Vercel, and then I'm initializing it at port 5000. The thing about this part that I actually want to call out here is in deploying an Express API to Vercel, you actually don't technically need to do that. But if you want to work on this thing locally and you don't want to do the whole Vercel dev where it spins up a serverless environment locally, which is super cool, and you should totally check that out. But if you're migrating from building an Express API the normal way, it's good to just have that there so you can do npm run dev, tinker with your API, and then when this thing gets deployed, it doesn't even look at that. So you can do whatever you want with that piece as long as it helps you out. Cool. So what we're going to do now is now that you kind of know what the Express API looks like, we're going to set up Vercel. So we're going to create our Vercel account. We're going to set up the CI. You'll see how super easy that is. And then we will go to Code Sandbox, where I already have this project up and running. We will prep it to where Vercel can turn it into a serverless function, and we will configure our Vercel.json file to where Vercel knows what to do with it. So let's go ahead and jump into that and get started. Cool. So go to vercel.com/sign up. Easy first step. I'm going to continue with GitHub. Oh, look at that. Right out of the gate, it asks for permission to do these things. So verify, know what resources, act on your behalf, all of that stuff. And this is essentially setting up the CI. You go to sign up, click one button. Now you're setting up CI. So we're going to authorize Vercel. Oh, looks like I got to create some stuff. So my full name is Demo Shadow. And Vercel Demo Shadow, that's fine. Cool. So I can import my Git repository here. And let's just do that real quick. Oh, I'm on PC, my bad. Is this your personal GitHub account? Yes. Select Vercel account, personal. And this is, where they try and rake their money in. You select create a new Vercel team, they're going to ask for bills. If you select personal, it's hobby. So definitely do that. Cool. So now they're asking to install on the personal account all repositories, only selected repositories. Just going to do this. Oh, hopefully I remember what this password is. Okay, cool. All right, that's the one. Continue. Yeah, so Vercel is gonna puke right here because it doesn't know how to handle anything about this. So we can go through this process, set up our build and output settings, our environment variables, but we're just going to click deploy, and you'll actually see this fail. Maybe, should. Anyway, so it's doing that whole build thing. It's acting as if it worked, and technically it did, but it's just my static index. It doesn't know how to handle it, so it just threw my source code up there. So this is actually where we want to get to, is the dashboard. Once you get through all that, and you give it permission and all that stuff, once you get here, this is where you're going to be all the time. If you log out and log back in, you're going to hit this page. So if I click Demo Shadow, this is where all of your projects live. So if you have multiple repositories that all deploy to Vercel, it's just going to add them to this card list. You can't really tell that this is a list, but it will just go down and down with all your projects. And one thing that's interesting to talk about here is I already have a production and a latest deployments. Like, yeah, it deployed it wrong because I haven't told Vercel what to do yet, but I have these endpoints and they're live right now. And this is what I'm talking about the preview deployment concept. It saw my master branch and was like, okay, he's importing this, so let's throw this out to the world. And that's what it did. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hop over to Code Sandbox. We're going to do a thing that you should absolutely never do, and make changes to master or main, and yeah, push it up, hop back over to the screen, and watch Vercel do its thing. All right. Where is my code sandbox? Here it is. Cool. So I have my demo Shadow Smith Express on Vercel. This isn't a talk on Code Sandbox, but you should definitely give this a try if you have never. It's like CodePen, but with a build process. You can do all kinds of nodey stuff in here. Cool. So this is where we kind of get into the meat of it. And the very first thing we need to do here to tell Vercel how to handle this is we need to export our initialized instance of Express. So that's super easy. We just do module.exports equals app, and step one is done. So just go ahead and save that. Cool. So now the very next thing we need to do is we need to create our Vercel.json file. And the cool thing about this is if you're ever trying to get buy-in at your company or work on this with a Tinker project or whatever the case, the vendor lock-in for Vercel is pretty much non-existent. As you can see, all I did is add a Vercel.json file, and that's all I have to do for this entire project. And even if I were to have many routes with an Express API, all I would have to do is export the app or the Express instance and add this Vercel.json file, and that's it. Like, that's all the prep I have to do. So yeah, anyway, the vendor lock-in is super small. So at the exact same time, you could deploy to Vercel, Netlify, and Firebase all in the same project with very little, kung fu involved because the vendor lock-in is just so small. So anyway, back to this. So in the Vercel.json file, we first need to specify the version of Vercel we would like to use. Pretty much use version 2. There is a version 1, but if you go to the Vercel docs, look for version 1, you'll hit a 404 because it's been that far gone. Like, don't even worry about it. At the top of all your Vercel.json files, just put version 2 up there. If we have some Vercel people out there that use version 1, definitely hit me up on NashJS, hit me up on Twitter, and just let me know what it's for, because I came into using Vercel after version 1. So version 2 is just the go-to for me. So as I specified earlier, we have to set up our builds. We have to tell Vercel how to handle our JavaScript, how to split this thing up and serve it as a serverless function after the build is finished. So what we're going to do is we specify our source. Whoops. Barely looks like an R. And we also have to specify, I'll do this, Vercel node. I'm used to saying now. What's it screaming about? Property expected. Oh, my bad. I suck. Let's throw my array in here, not an object. All right, cool. Cool, so like I said, this is where I'm specifying that we're going to be turning our index.js file, which is really where our Express API lives. We're going to turn that into a serverless function at build time using the Vercel/node npm package. And then after this, we have to specify our routes. So this is where we specify a source, and I'm going to do this gnarly looking dude. And this source is pretty much saying anything that is after the / at the end of the URL, map it to the destination that I'm about to put in. So you do destination with dest and then index.js. That's really just saying with the builds, we're turning index.js into a serverless function using the Vercel node npm package at build. And then whenever someone hits a path that's / this could be / / whatever resource that you put there, like books or whatever. Then I want you to fulfill that request by serving up this index.js serverless function, whatever that ends up being. And from here, whoops, I just got to save it. And that's it. There was only those 2 steps. We had to make sure to export this one, and we had to set this up to tell it what to do. And then from here, we can hop on over to this. I'm just going to commit straight to master. Let's use some appropriate summary name here. So add Vercel config. That works. Cool. So we're going to commit our changes directly up. If I look on over at Vercel, let's go to this. You see this little orange indicator? I have a deployment building right now. I didn't hardly do anything at all. And I have this thing. Look, it says it's already done. What? How awesome is that? So I have this domain name here, and if I go to it, look, I don't know if you can see this or not, but it says express on Vercel. That is our Git route en route successfully responding right here on screen. So that worked. It's beautiful. That's great. Let me get on back over here. So what you'll notice though is if I go to my express on Vercel, if I just like drill one step into that project, there's this deployments tab that comes up at the top. You can actually see that there's 2 of them here. And like I said, there's this whole concept of preview deployments. This is where Vercel stands out. And Netlify also does the same thing. So you might already kind of know where I'm headed here. But if I go to this URL, if you remember, Vercel didn't know how to handle this stuff, so it just puked on screen. And I had my index.js content just in text here. And it's still live. If you want to take this as an analogy, imagine you have a full web application or an API, for instance, and you are trying to show off a new version, but you don't want to lose the old version. And you may want to like compare and contrast between the 2 with your team or whatever. Vercel gives you the ability right out of the box to have what you did and what you're experimenting with live to go nuts with. So if I back up here and click this one, see it, that's the live one. That's the good one. So, that's pretty much it. Like for this talk, I've covered almost everything that I plan to. I could go a little further and show if you make subsequent changes, how you can have not just 2 deployments, but you could have 3 deployments and they can all be different. And then you can delete the ones that are stale and all of this fun stuff. Or I can, show you guys that after the talk at a later time, if you have additional questions. What I'm going to do at this point is go back to my slides, throw it on over here, and kind of give you my final thoughts on this. Again, my name's Shadow Smith. I'm going to be answering Q&A after I give my final thoughts. And if you want to check out this presentation, it's actually hosted, as meta as this is, using Vercel at https express.on.vercel.app. Hope you like what I did there. And I also wrote an article on my website, shadowsmith.com, which covers this thing in detail, exactly how to do what I just said here on this talk. But anyway, my final thoughts is you don't have to learn Vercel to deploy an Express API. You know, I already kind of mentioned this earlier in the talk, but you can use Vercel the same way you'd use Netlify. You can use it for your little resume project. You can use it for your portfolio where it's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's actual Vercel specific builders for Vue, for Nuxt, for Next, for any of these front end frameworks. You can use it for server side generated apps. You can use it for Jamstack apps, anything where you're essentially getting some static assets, throwing it up on a CDN. Vercel is absolutely great for that. Yeah, so I highly, highly suggest digging into this, and I would love to see what you guys build with it. But for instance, one thing that I did here is actually created this little tool called mega domain search, where this whole front end is deployed using Vercel, and I have an Express API on the back end that's also deployed using Vercel, and I can version this thing. I can go back in time and see my pushes from 6 months ago, and I still have the preview deploy URLs. It's extremely powerful. And just to show how fast this is, I'm just going to throw a bunch of random stuff in here. All of these domains are going to fail. NashJS, Shadowsmith, that one will fail. Privacy policy, lame. Yeah, that stuff sucks to work with. Whatever. And then I fire that off. And look how fast. Every single one of these was a hit to a backend API that is 100% free. This front end is 100% free. The only cost I have for this entire NashJS.com is available. All right, I'm gonna reset this. Anyway, my only cost to this entire tool is the domain name. And as you all know, or you might know, as you might know, that's super cheap. Like, I can bootstrap 1,000 projects this way. I can use AWS's DynamoDB free tier. I can use Cognito. I can use all these different API services to get a full stack web app up, all using generous free tiers. And the only expense out of my pocket is the cost of the domain name. So let your imagination run nuts with that. Just go crazy. If you need to build a microservices architecture for some complex idea you have in your head, with Vercel and Jamstack architecture, you can do that, and your only cost is the domain name if you choose to even brand it in any way prior to it getting to a version 1. So anyway, I'm going to kind of turn my head over here to my laptop, take a peek at the YouTube chat, and if you guys have any questions whatsoever about anything that I said, I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I'll hit you guys up in NashJS at a later time once I figure that out, or can point you to someone who does know. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shadow. That was really great. It looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat. I think you addressed some of them as you were going, but to kind of read through the scroll back here. It looks like also Alan from Vercel is in the chat as well, who actually works there.
Oh, sick.
So they have some insight they can help share as well. So
that's awesome.
We should send them a link to the Zoom and get on here and chat with us. But anyways, great job. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, anytime. I love this stuff. And Alan, we should totally connect. I've been hitting up Guillermo for weeks, trying to become a community contributor to write articles on this stuff for you guys.
Well, there you go. You got an audience now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Guillermo's great, man. He keynoted November a while back, and he was just an awesome guy.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, I'm gonna scroll up here and kind of take a peek at this. And yeah, having Alan in the chat, he could probably help smash some of these out too. Definitely more than I could. I'm the guy who has the passion. I'll give people hype, and then Alan can help me answer it. Sorry to just go. I hope you work pro bono, man. I'm just playing. That's awesome. Yeah, he was in here answering like everything. This is awesome. Yeah, and I agree 100%, Alan. Serving the HTML and CSS, don't do that from Express. It's like throw it in there and serve that as static assets. Completely agree.
Oh, also one thing on your limits that you talked about early on, Shadow.
Yeah.
One thing I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Alan, if you're listening still, if you use Next.js as static or serverless, I think even that doesn't count against your deployment limit. I think if you can, maybe you can pull that back up. I think if you use Next.js, though, it gives you some extra goodies if you do that.
Yeah, Alan, if you could answer that, that would be excellent for the ones listening that are React people. Again, I'm a Vue guy.
You got to make that switch, man.
I don't know, man. My entire company runs on Nuxt, so
it would be kind of neat to see what a Next.js would look like. That's like maybe framework agnostic that could plug into Vue or React or hell even Angular or whatever. But I don't know. It's pretty baked in to React right now, at least from the source that I've looked at.
yeah. Luckily, there is the Nuxt specific Vercel builder that I abuse, and I apologize. I have probably, I don't know, coming close to 50 Vercel projects probably, and a lot of them are Nuxt. Yeah, and Isaac Weber, I actually want to call him out here, not in a bad way, of course, more of a shout out. We both worked together at Business Credit Reports, and we both moved on from that, but we worked with Nuxt, Apollo, GraphQL, Prisma, that whole thing. And I was actually in the chat whenever he did that talk a couple months back, and we collaborated on this thing called Knapstack, where it's a GitHub repo that we both worked on, where people can spin up a full stack Nuxt, so Vue web app that has Apollo and Prisma and has optimistic UI and like all this awesome stuff. And we were actually able to get Nuxt and our Apollo server on one Vercel deploy, which was beautiful. I know he tinkers a lot with Prisma, specifically Prisma 2. I haven't really dug into that, but he was able to get all three of those on one Vercel deploy, which was absolutely insane.
That's awesome.
So definitely.
Well, Isaac, looks like you just got signed up for a Prisma 2 talk.
Yeah.
So submit that.
That would be awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, we could do a talk on deploying a GraphQL playground from Apollo through Vercel. Like, I'm all about it. Honestly, I don't use any other platform at this point. Alan, if you hear that, you and your team have my heart.
Well, it sounds like a ringing endorsement. So, and I've been a big fan of well, Zeit, but now I guess Vercel as well.
Yeah.
For a long time. Their contributions back to the community have just been fantastic. So props to you guys and the team over there, Alan.
Yeah, 100%.
Gals, rather, sorry.
And I Alan too, if you can like throw the dictionary, what's the right word, way to say the name of the brand, I feel like,
like the pronunciation of it.
Yeah, the pronunciation, that's the word, common English. Yeah, if you could throw that in there, that would be awesome. I never know if I'm saying it wrong or not. If I am, sorry, I just did a whole talk saying it wrong. Vercel. So yeah, cool. I feel like I was pretty on. Awesome.
It's a German word.
Yeah, I saw some developers. Oh my God, my mind is just straight in developer land. I saw some people on the internet with the last name Vercel.
Oh no, Zeitz is a German word. I'm not sure if Vercel is. Or Vercel. Now I'm saying it. I don't know which one's right. Vercel. Okay, cool. Sorry, I just now got the chat back up. Vercel, like a cell phone.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. I'm
Yeah,
still gonna get it wrong.
Of the 25 people still watching, do you have any questions? Like, you have me, which I've tinkered with this heavily. You have Alan in the chat that works at Vercel.
Alan in the chat.
Yeah, Alan in the chat. Like, the complete surprise. Super excited that he's there. Yeah, I don't want to just like sit here and not help anyone.
Cool. We'll give it just a couple more seconds, see if anything flows through. If not, oh, it looks like Samuel works there as well, but they're being quiet. So, what's up, Samuel?
Yeah, shout out to Samuel.
Man, I think so. That's like 4% of our viewers right there. It is actually
that's awesome.
Vercel employees. So,
did you guys see where I tweeted about this talk and added Vercel?
There you go. That's what it was. Like, you got to make sure they're not going to trash us.
Yeah.
Get on here. No, thanks so much for joining in, y'all. I really appreciate y'all being here. Everyone watching is actually yes.
That's funny.
Awesome. Well, cool. Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Shadow, for getting on here. I'm sure if anybody else has any questions, feel free to tweet, Alan or Samuel or Shadow, and feel free to jump on nashdev.com. There's the JavaScript channel. Probably should make a Vercel channel on there now after this ringing endorsement to the platform. But please. JavaScript or Node or whatever can help you out get started. So thanks again. If anybody wants to give a talk, if any of y'all folks at Vercel want to give a talk, reach out too. We'd love to have you. Now that we're doing this stuff remote, it's a little bit more, user friendly to get people on a stream versus flying you in. So, although once we're back in person, we'd love to have you down in Nashville sometime. So, yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop blabbing. Thanks again, Shadow. The recording should be up on YouTube here in a little while. I might trim it down a little bit to cut out some of our setup stuff, but yeah. All right, we'll see y'all next month. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. See you guys.
See ya.